She came screaming up the gravel drive like a banshee on a mission. Clipboard in one hand, phone in the other. Filming, of course, shouting something about non-compliance and community standards. I was mid-swing with the axe, chopping firewood, when I looked up and thought, here we go again. My dog, Buck, barked his head off. Claire, my wife, peeked out from the cabin porch with a mug of coffee and that look on her face, the one that said, I've had just about enough of this. Karen didn't slow down. She marched right up the drive, red-faced and righteous. You people are in violation of Article 3B, Section. Claire held up one hand. Calm, cool, composed. Then she pulled a folded piece of paper from her jacket and handed it to her like a mic drop. Karen took it with all the confidence in the world. But as her eyes moved down the page, her face changed. First confusion, then disbelief, then silence. You could hear the wind through the pines. Wah, what is this? She whispered. Claire just sipped her coffee. It's a warrant. You might want to read it. That's when Karen froze. Literally didn't speak for a full minute. Just stood there, mouth twitching, paper trembling in her hand, that you're probably wondering how we got to this moment. How a peaceful couple in a cabin ended up serving a warrant to the most overbearing HOA rep in history. Don't worry. I'll tell you everything. But buckle up. Because this ride? It's wild that it all started when Claire and I decided to ditch city life. After years of traffic, rent hikes, and sirens at 2 a.m., we needed quiet. Something real. Something ours that we found. The cabin during a weekend trip through the mountains. It was nestled between tall pines at the end of a gravel road, overlooking a small lake. No neighbors in shouting distance. No streetlights. Just stars. It felt like a dream. The place was old, sure. The deck creaked, and the fireplace needed work, but we didn't care. We fell in love instantly. A few months later, we bought it, fair and square, all permits signed, property lines clear. For the first few weeks, it was perfect. Mornings with birdsong, evenings with wine by the fire. Claire planted a garden. I fixed the porch swing. Buck chased squirrels like it was his job, but every paradise has a snake. Ours came in the form of a white SUV, spotless, with HOA Patrol written on the side in stick-on letters. It rolled up one Saturday afternoon. Out stepped a woman in her late 50s, bob haircut, sunglasses, and the unmistakable aura of someone who's been president of every committee she's ever joined. She didn't smile, didn't wave, just walked right up and said, "This structure doesn't meet community aesthetic guidelines." Claire blinked. "I'm sorry, who are you?" "I'm Karen. I represent the Homeowners Association." We exchanged confused glances. As far as we knew, this area didn't have an HOA. Our realtor never mentioned one. But Karen had a binder, and that binder had tabs. Tabs meant trouble. That was the day the piece cracked. We didn't know it yet, but the battle for our cabin had just begun. The next week, she was back, clipboard in hand. This time, she complained about the unauthorized color of our shutters. They were forest green, literally designed to blend in with the woods. "I'm afraid that color violates the neighborhood palette," she said, as if she were a judge handing down a sentence. That I looked around. Trees. Rocks. More trees. What? Neighborhood. She ignored me. Then came the trash bin warning. We kept our cans near the back deck. Apparently, that was unsightly. She suggested we build a screened enclosure with approved materials. Of course, that it was laughable. We lived on 5 acres. No one could see our trash but the raccoons. And they weren't filing complaints. Claire asked for documentation proving we were under HOA jurisdiction. Karen waved her binder like it was a law book. "This entire region falls under our purview. It's a legacy covenant." Legacy covenant? It sounded made up. Claire took notes anyway. Things got weirder. One day, we caught her pacing near the back of the property, holding her phone up like she was recording something. Another time, she left a printed letter on our windshield claiming our chimney was too tall. We tried to be patient. Maybe she was misinformed. Maybe she thought she was doing the right thing. But the truth started to settle in. Karen didn't like that we were here, and she was determined to make us leave. Neighbors started warning us, too. "She's been like this for years," one guy told me at the hardware store. "Goes around, pretending she runs the whole mountain." Claire and I made a decision. We weren't going to back down. This was our home, our peace, and Karen was messing with the wrong couple. The notices kept coming. sometimes taped to our door, sometimes stuffed in the mailbox, once even tied to our gate with string. Each one more absurd than the last. Point one claimed we needed to replace our gravel driveway with approved pavers. Another said our dogs' barking was disruptive to community tranquility, even though our nearest neighbor was a quarter-mile away. That we laughed at first, but then came the threats. We'll fine you $500 per violation, one letter said. Refusal to comply may result in further action. Claire called the county office. They confirmed our cabin was outside the HOA boundary. Whatever Karen was doing had no legal standing to so Claire started documenting everything. Photos, videos, copies of notes. She even installed a motion sensor camera near the gate. We weren't just annoyed anymore. We were getting ready. Karen showed up again the following weekend. She didn't knock, just started walking around the property with her clipboard, muttering and measuring. Claire stepped out and asked her, point blank, to leave. Karen refused. This is community property, she said. I have the right to inspect it. That was a lie, but a bold one. I called the sheriff's non-emergency line. They said unless she entered the cabin or physically threatened us, it was a civil matter. Great, but they did suggest we could file a complaint for harassment. Claire took that to heart. She started digging deeper, checking public records, asking questions, and what she found changed everything. Turns out, the HOA Karen kept referencing used to include our area about 15 years ago. But in 2009, a legal redraw of county lines officially excluded our property from the HOA district. It was right there in black and white. Public record, even better. The HOA itself had changed leadership several times. Karen wasn't even on the board anymore. She'd been voted out 3 years ago after a string of complaints. Claire found old minutes from board meetings. One entry read, concerns raised regarding former president continuing to act on behalf of the HOA without consent. That former president? Karen, that we weren't the first people she'd harassed. A retired couple 2 roads down filed a restraining order against her in 2018. Another neighbor said she showed up to inspect their garage paint and called animal control on their cat. Yet that's when Claire had an idea: legal action. She spoke to a local attorney who specialized in property law. After a week of compiling evidence, the videos, letters, photos, timestamps, we had a solid case. The lawyer drafted a cease and desist order and submitted a complaint to the county. Claire also submitted a request for a civil harassment injunction. But that wasn't all. That we learned that impersonating an official, especially for the purpose of entering private property, was a chargeable offense in our county. The lawyer helped file for a warrant to restrain unauthorized entry and impersonation. It was official. Now we just needed Karen to make one more move. And of course, she did. 1 week later, she came back. Loud as ever, she pulled into the drive, with her SUV blaring some sort of warning siren. No joke. And stormed out like she was the sheriff of a TV Western. This is your final warning, she shouted, filming again. You are in direct violation of the HOA charter. I will be entering the premises for inspection. Claire was already waiting on the porch. Calm. Ready. You are not authorized to be on this property, Karen, she said evenly. Karen scoffed. Oh, I am authorized. And if you don't let me in, I will report you to the board and the county. That's when I stepped out too. Go ahead, I said. We'd love to hear what they say. Karen moved toward the cabin. Claire blocked her path. You need to stop right now. Karen snapped. Don't you dare tell me what to do on my mountain. That's when Claire reached into her coat and pulled out the document. I'm not telling you anything, she said. This is... She handed Karen the folded paper. Karen grabbed it, ready to argue. But as she opened it, her face changed. Her voice cracked. This is a warrant, Claire finished. Filed and approved. You are to cease all contact, stay off our property, and stop claiming to represent any HOA authority. Karen blinked. But I am the... No. I cut in. You were. Not anymore. She stood there, paper shaking in her hand, eyes darting between us and the cabin. Her mouth opened to say something, but no words came. And then she turned and left. No siren. No threats, just silence. After Karen left, we stood there in stunned silence for a while. Not because we were shocked, but because it had finally worked. The warrant Claire handed her wasn't just a cease and desist. It included a court-acknowledged notice of prior harassment, a formal declaration that Karen had no HOA authority, and a threat of legal consequences if she continued impersonating an officer of the board that we sent a copy to the HOA's actual leadership. They were horrified. Apparently, they'd tried multiple times to stop Karen from acting rogue. One board member even thanked Claire personally for pursuing legal action. 3 days later, a formal letter arrived from the HOA stating that Karen was permanently banned from representing them in any capacity. The board apologized for any confusion or discomfort caused. A week after that, we received a message from a local news reporter asking if we'd be willing to speak about the HOA impersonator in the mountains. We politely declined. Karen hasn't shown her face since. Claire keeps the original warrant in a folder labeled witch repellent, just in case. Now, we wake up to the sound of birds, not arguments. Buck naps on the porch. The garden's blooming. And the only clipboard in sight is the one I use for my fishing log. Every time I look at Claire, I'm reminded, never underestimate a calm woman with receipts, documentation, and a really good lawyer. Peace, it turns out, is even sweeter when you have to fight for it. After everything settled down, Claire and I finally exhaled. No more strange visits. No more false warnings. Just the quiet rhythm of the woods and the occasional loon calling from the lake that we got thank you notes from a few neighbors. Apparently, Karen had been a nightmare for years. Claire joked she should start a side business, Karen Control and Legal Services. One evening, we sat by the fire pit with glasses of wine and watched the stars. Claire looked over and said, "You know, I didn't do this just for us." I nodded. I know. Because the truth is, when someone tries to bully you, especially under the guise of authority, you have every right to push back. Legally, smartly, and calmly. So here's the takeaway. Know your rights. Document everything. And don't let anyone with a binder and a bad attitude make you question what's yours. As for Karen, well, I hope she found a new hobby. One that doesn't involve trespassing, because out here, we protect our peace.